Hey everybody, welcome back to another episode of Friends from Film School. I'm Luke Pilgrim.
I'm Brad Kennedy.
And I'm Ellis.
And off camera, we have our intern Ryan. He's filming a little video of us right now, but
that's Ryan's perspective.
he's there for all the Google questions we might have. So I ran into Ellis yesterday.
Oh yeah? Like,
He did.
did you scare him?
He ran me over.
I did scare him pretty bad.
Really bad.
Can I take a guess where this is at?
Yes.
The Kroger.
Yes.
Yep. Of course, Kroger in Gainesville, and just happened to be pulling out on the same aisle where he's putting his groceries into his car. And I was like, Carrie was driving, and I was like, I think that's Ellis. And she pulled off and stopped. And instead of just being like, hey, man, I was like, ah! And he jumped like somebody shot him.
It was like that, but like 3 times as loud.
It was.
And
God,
that was pretty loud in my ears.
From my perspective, I
The
was
Jedi
like, my head's like halfway into like the trunk, and I hear someone screaming.
you
I'm
hit your
like,
head?
I'm ready to just get like squashed between 2 cars, between mine and someone else.
Dude, I was dying. And he was like, he said, I was ready to just accept my fate. It's like, I'm just ready to die. This is it.
I don't even shop at that Kroger. What are the odds of that?
That's what I said. I was like, what are the odds that I would be pulling out on the same aisle? And I was like, later we were talking about it, because I was like, what else would if I would have just said, hey, I was like, that just would have been lame. I would have just kept driving.
Yeah.
But if I was going to stop, I had to scream at you. I'm sorry. I actually did feel bad afterwards because it really freaked him out.
I almost had like a heart attack.
Yeah.
It was really, it got me.
Oh, man.
Anyways.
So why were you at that Kroger?
I went to go see my parents, and that's just the one on the way back instead of the
Gotcha.
other one.
It's close to your house, though.
It is, but the other one's not that far away either, and they have a much bigger selection. So
Yeah,
I like going to that one more.
That Kroger is kind of not as good.
No.
Yeah.
Okay.
Sorry, Kroger.
Yeah. Fix your stores.
Well, today we're going to talk about some visual effects and some practical effects, right? What's the
difference?
What's the difference? We're going to talk about, I guess, what's our question? What's our question for today?
I would say the question would be, are CGI or computer graphic effects better than practical effects?
Yeah. Or vice versa.
Or vice
Or
versa.
vice-
Yeah, are practical effects better than CGI?
Yeah.
Okay, cool. I mean, to start us off, I thought I'd fill the audience in on what that even means. Like, if you're not super into filmmaking terms, I mean, honestly, hey, God bless you over there.
Thank you.
God bless you.
If you're not super into film, I mean, when you started working with us, Ellis, you kind of corrected us on the way we might have said special effects when we really meant visual effects.
That's only because I got corrected.
Yeah.
And then I felt obligated to do it to everyone else.
Right. I mean, it's a good thing to know, though, because special effects are things done practically, like physically, without computer-generated imagery, which is what CGI stands for. And, until the 90s, if you wanted to make any kind of special effect, like a spaceship or like an exploding building like in Die Hard or something, you most likely had to use miniatures. Or if you wanted like, a friendly homesick alien or a 900-year-old green Jedi master, you had to create an animatronic, a puppet, or stop motion. And I mean, stop motion I love, but I feel like it's the most obvious offender. Like, you typically can kind of tell,
Well, especially in Wes Anderson films or whatever, right?
Yeah.
Because like there's certain scenes where he'll just like randomly incorporate it.
Oh, in the live action.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And
I was going to say even more so like when we watched Terminator.
Oh,
you know?
yeah.
When
Yeah.
it cut to the parts where it was stop motion, it stuck out.
Totally.
100%.
But, of course, one of the first movies to use CGI was Jurassic Park.
Terminator.
At
least Terminator 2.
In a realistic, almost
Yeah.
photorealistic way.
Well, they were really smart about it.
Yeah. And that's because of the mixture of CGI and practical effects. Yeah, it was cool. Like, it's really cool how they did, like, if there was a full body or like a running dinosaur, of course they had to do CGI. You know, Spielberg wanted to originally do giant animatronics running, like he wanted to do it all with full-size animatronics, and they were like, that's gonna be impossible.
Yeah.
That also seems like an easy way to actually have a Jurassic Park situation where the animatronics are starting to kill you.
Yeah. Dude, a T-Rex steps on your AD or something. Yeah, and sometimes though they had guys like in puppets or like guys in suits, which is crazy.
The raptors, right? In the kitchen.
Yeah, like that's pretty cool. Like I can't imagine playing a raptor, but
I think I went to Disney or Universal when I was a kid, and they actually had like this almost exhibit where they had some of the animatronics from Jurassic Park set up, and you could like actually go feel them and see them, and like they like moved as they did in the movie. It was really cool.
There was a ride. I rode a ride that did that. It was like the T-Rex come through the wall at you, kind of. Was it that?
Well, it
and
was.
You go down this it was a water ride, and then there's dinosaurs everywhere.
I did ride that, yes, and you would like dip right before the T-Rex would attack you. But it was like in the line or something before that they had animatronics and stuff set up.
Oh, that's cool.
Yeah.
Interesting.
So, you know, one of the oldest camera tricks is forced perspective. You know, in fact, that's like one of the first things you try to do when you're a kid with a camera, like with a camcorder. You can take your dinosaur toy and put it close to the camera, and then you run way back away from the camera, and you act like it's, you know, above you, and you look small, you look tiny compared to the big dinosaur toy.
I always think of too when people are like in Paris and they take their finger and they put it over the Eiffel Tower or something like that.
Yeah, or like the Leaning Tower of Pisa where they're like acting like they're holding it up, you know. So yeah, you'll see people on Instagram even do this effect.
Even if you hold your hand up close and it's like trying to grab something.
Yeah, like the sun.
Yeah,
or
you're just
the
like,
moon.
Yeah.
Another cool thing, and this uses forced perspective, is the Ames room, which I don't know if a lot of people may not have heard of this, but it's set up to look. It's so hard to explain this too. I will have to show it visually. So if you're an audio listener, I do recommend checking out our video version on YouTube, because a lot of our episodes do have a ton of extra content that you're not seeing if you're just listening to the audio version. But anyways, the Ames room is set up to look like a normal square room if you're from the correct camera angle. Yeah. But the back wall is actually not straight across. Instead, it's moving away from us on one side. So that means like a person can stand on like one side of the room closer to the camera, and then the other person stands on the opposite side of the room, but they're further away from the camera because of that back wall being slanted. And that gives the impression that one of them is way bigger than the other one.
When was that like developed?
I don't know. Can you look that up?
Isn't it like slanted too? Like there's like a decline almost in the room.
Oh, on the floor?
Yeah.
I don't know if the floor goes down.
Or maybe it was the roof.
The roof does, because of if you want the person in the front to look like they're like hunched over against the ceiling.
Yeah.
So it could be like that, and then the back of the room is taller.
Oh yeah, it goes up. Okay.
It was created in 1946.
Wow.
The Ames room.
Geniuses.
Yeah. It's pretty cool. So yeah, I mean.
So wait, during, I guess like World War II's over, and some guy's like, you know what? I can finally create this crazy, wacky room I always wanted to.
This is important now.
Yeah.
This is what's important after World War II.
What else are they going to do? World War II's over.
Yeah. And maybe it was a burst in creative stuff, because they're not at war anymore.
Everyone was super hyped.
Well, to do this, typically you have to film with like a wide-angle lens. You can't have any shallow focus, because otherwise it won't look like.
Right.
It'll be like inexplicably the one person is blurry, but they look like they're right across from each other, which so because of that, you need a ton of light.
I bet some people have done that for like effect.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, like making them blurry intentionally or something. Yeah. So yeah, I mean, you need a ton of light because you have to shoot, with your camera, your f-stop so high,
Right.
And the person who's further away needs like twice as much light to look like they're lit the same as the person who's supposed to be next to them, but they're actually 10 feet away. So you need like twice as much light to reach that person, unless you can rig it in the ceiling closer to
That's
them
what I
or
was
something.
wondering if you could just hide it up. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Now, Eternal Sunshine of the Spotless Mind,
Yeah.
they use forced perspective brilliantly. Full-grown Jim Carrey looks small enough to fit under a table and have the other characters appear larger than him, like they're just normal-sized people, but he looks like he's a little kid. I love that effect.
Cool scene.
You know, Elf did the similar thing. They made Will Ferrell seem even larger than the other elves. But this kind of brings us to you, Ellis. One of the most impressive films to have used forced perspective is Lord of the Rings.
Oh, yeah. And they did it in everything.
Yeah.
And they took it to the next level, too.
They did it in motion.
Yeah. So if you haven't seen Lord of the Rings, stop. Go watch Lord of the Rings.
Well, yeah, where have you been?
Yeah, for real. But the scene where Gandalf is visiting the Shire and he's in the Hobbit's house, they had to make the Hobbit seem smaller, like they're halflings, right?
Yeah.
And so he has to seem taller. So there's certain shots where he's sitting at a table, and then you have the other cast sitting at the table. And what they do is the camera's moving because they want to have this pan shot. So they have the tables moving in conjunction to the camera move to maintain the distance needed and keep the illusion of Gandalf being taller than the hobbits.
Yeah. Do you know, like, were the tables, were people physically moving those, or was it like a
It looked like it was
machine?
a full machine rig setup because it moved perfectly in line with the camera move.
Did they use motion control cameras? I feel like they would have had to.
I think
feel like they would
they
have.
did.
Yeah.
I only saw like bits and pieces of the BTS of them doing it, but they didn't
Yeah.
explain what type of camera they were using.
Yeah.
Another cool one that they did was the cart ride with Frodo and Gandalf.
I love that.
Dude, if I didn't know this, but the cart is actually like super deep where they're sitting, so it goes way back into the cart. So you have Frodo sitting like a good 2 or 3
Yeah.
feet back from Gandalf.
It's like wide.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so like he's like way back here, and then you have Gandalf right here, and then they frame up the camera so they look like they're sitting next to each other.
That's so cool.
It's awesome.
Yeah. Again, you have to look at the visuals here. It's really hard to describe this, but that's this amazing effect that I don't know how people figure that stuff out.
How long do you think it took him to figure all this out?
I think it probably took them a while because I watched this video and it went in depth on like how they did the special effects, and this was only like one method they used to like create the height difference between the hobbits and the rest of the cast. And
I bet they did some like comping too, right? Where they shot on green screens.
They did. It was blue screens
Blue
for
screen.
this one. And it was only used in wides where there were the two characters interacting with each other in the same room. Like when Bilbo takes Gandalf's hat, right? When he first enters his home. The two characters are there on set together and they need to make Gandalf taller. So they had Gandalf on a blue screen. And then they had different props that he was supposed to interact with on the blue screen.
Wow.
And then they comped that into the shot.
Now, was Bilbo actually in the shot? The original shot? So he's in the room.
Right.
They're
So the
filming.
room is like scaled up. So it's like the size. So it makes it look like he's like a halfling, like he's small and it like is the right size for a halfling. But for Gandalf, it needed to look like he was way bigger. So
Yeah.
that's why they like sized him up in the blue screen comp.
Wow. That's amazing because watching that back, it's like they had the lighting perfect and everything. So I never even thought about it, you know.
They did.
I knew they had to do something to make him look big, but
What was cool about these movies too is they had the perfect blend of like hidden visual effects and
Yeah.
like special effects that like you wouldn't know about unless you watch it behind the scenes.
yeah.
Like another way that they did the height difference is they actually had these large scale animatronics that were like 3 feet taller than like your average person.
Whoa.
And they put like giant like fake hands and clothing and stuff on them, right? And so whenever they're in like the bar scene, like it's like all the hobbits, there will be people that pass by behind them, and it's just animatronics that are
What?
passing by.
No way.
And that's in the movie? Like,
Yeah.
they used them? It wasn't, like, replaced?
No, that's in
Whoa.
the movie. They're like just huge animatronics that pass by that are like draped in big clothing and like hands. And
That's
since it's
cool.
so fleeting, you can't tell.
Oh, that's so cool.
Yeah. It was awesome. And then the last thing they did for the forced perspective was they used scale doubles of the characters. So they would either have like really tall versions of the humans, or they'd have really short versions of the hobbits.
So, and that's just stand-ins, like
Yeah,
people.
but like what they had to do for certain shots is they would have to comp on the actors' faces onto those characters. So there would be like the scale doubles, and then they would blue screen the real actors doing the same scene, and they would just like overlay their face. It's like a face swap.
Whoa.
And they were doing that all the way back in like the early 2000s.
Yeah.
Huh.
So that was like a lot of really cool like special effects and visual effects kind of like coming together in Lord of the Rings. Not even mentioning Gollum, who was like a landmark
Dang.
achievement.
Like
Yeah.
nearly 20 years ago. That's crazy.
And those movies, for the most part, hold up really, really well.
Yeah, besides like some of the camera moves, because they're a little cheesy once you go back and watch the movies.
Really?
He has like these like quick pan-ins like during the fights and stuff. That's
Oh,
really
Like
See-
action stuff that seems dated.
yeah.
Gotcha. Yeah, I feel like the only stuff that kind of would stick out, at least the last time I watched it, I used to watch Lord of the Rings like every summer, like before school came back. I would like just sit down, watch the whole trilogy, and then that would be a tradition. But it's been a little while, but I feel like the last time I watched it, what really stuck out was the cave troll in Fellowship of the Rings. And that reminds me, it's better than the first Harry Potter where it has the troll,
Yeah.
but it's that early CGI, and especially Legolas when he's like jumping on it. It's like clearly.
Yes, it's so bad.
Rubber, like the rubber looking.
Yeah.
They fixed it though, because when they made Gollum, they had what's his name, Andy Serkins.
Yeah, circus.
Yeah. His performance was all captured in mocap suits, but they couldn't get the animation to line up right with the original Gollum's face that you see at the end of the Fellowship of the Ring when he
Yeah.
like peers up. So they had to restructure the model to look more like him, so that they could get the actual like facial performance to like line up.
Wait, they went back and fixed stuff?
Well, no, it's like in Fellowship they had an original
They have that
model,
one shot. Yeah.
Okay, gotcha.
but it didn't work for his performance, so
Yeah.
they recreated the model and made it look more like
Gotcha.
like the guy, the
Yeah.
person playing the
And
character.
the smart thing they did in Fellowship too is that shot of Gollum is just pretty much, it's in the dark and it's like his eyes. So they probably knew they were, because they filmed everything straight through too.
Yeah.
So they knew they might not have had it perfect at that point, but they're like, this is good enough to work for this moment.
yeah.
Man, filming movies back to back, that's
Yeah.
intense.
It was cool watching the behind the scenes because they're all talking like it's all happening, like they're all filming it like continuously. It's really neat. But another thing they did was the miniatures, which
Yeah.
they created basically bigatures, right? So they had different scaled versions of sets, like Helm's Deep. They had a tiny version, and then they would have like a really big version of Helm's Deep that's like maybe half of your height. Another one they did was, do you know Fangorn Forest, where he meets the Ents?
Yeah.
yeah.
Treebeard.
Yeah, Treebeard. That one was built on a soundstage with like, I think they said it was like 1,500 trees, and there were guys in the video that were literally going through and hanging different pieces of moss to like decorate the trees on ladders, and they just have an entire soundstage full of trees.
Whoa.
And they're like, the attention to detail of making every single tree look like unique.
And what's
different.
the scale though? It's still like, it's a miniature, right? But
It's
it looks
it's
just
like the
huge.
size of a tree.
Oh, it's the size of a tree?
It's like they're on ladders and they're having to like hang stuff like this because each one is like the size of a tree.
So it's made to look like an actual forest then. Whoa.
Was it made to be even bigger since it would be what?
Yeah.
Pippin and
It had
Merry?
to it had to be tall enough for the guy who played Merry to like climb the trees. So I mean, it was maybe up to the top of your roof here, like per tree. That's kind of what it looked like in the video.
That's cool.
And then I have a couple more things.
You go ahead.
So they that was like really cool special effects they did. They did incorporate something that was a visual effect that was really creative. So you know the big fight scene at like Helm's Deep, or like all the, it's like those extreme wides, and you see like all these soldiers like fighting each other.
Yeah.
What they used for that was a program called Massive, And what they would do is they would make one CGI model, right?
Yeah.
Of like an orc. And in Massive, you could like randomize the proportions of that model so it doesn't look like the same character. So it'd be like make his arms tall, like longer, or like make his legs shorter, make his helmet bigger. And they would do that with like 3 or 4 models and just make like a ton of variations.
And it does that on its own. You can set it to randomize it. Like,
you can, but like if it didn't look right, you could go in and customize
tweak it. Yeah.
And then
with the giant head.
well, what they did from there is they had all of their stunt people record different like fight scenarios, right? In mocap suits. So they would do like different like actions, like sword swing, block, weird kick or something, right? And all of that performance was captured as mocap data. And then what they would do is they would program that data into the models randomly, and the characters would enter, like if you came up against an object as the CGI model, it would kick on one of those mocap things. So it'd be like a random animation. So it like encounters an obstacle in the program, random animation. The other obstacle, which is like one of the good guys or bad guys, random animation. So then they had all of these random character models and random things doing all of these animations and fighting each other, and they could just make thousands and thousands of them.
And these are for the very wide shots where you're seeing kind of like bird's eye of
when
battles.
you see the two armies like come in and they just like start fighting, and it's like these are just like a bunch of tiny models all doing these random fighting animations.
That's cool, because it would be impossible to animate every one of those when there's like 10,000 of them in a shot or whatever. You know, that's kind of like with like World War Z. They did stuff like that for the zombies to randomize it. And I think even back to Titanic with the people on the ship, some of that was like randomized, I think.
It's so smart. That was like mostly what I ran into with Lord of the Rings itself. To me, it was a really good blend of CGI and special effects, and I don't think it would be very cost effective today to do it how they did it, which is why people mostly do CGI, which is how I think you got The Hobbit, because The Hobbit's like full CG scenes. I watched the video and it's every single scene is like full CGI, water simulations. Like when Smaug comes out of the gold coins, that was 18 million individually rendered coins.
Holy cow.
In that place.
Whoa.
That all like were part of like this particle simulation that would like interact with his model or whatever, but it looks so fake because they didn't use a lot of special effects. There's just like it looks good, but it doesn't look right because they're not blending the two. It's just this weird like it's uncanny valley feeling.
It's overly it's like overly produced, and it's, you can just kind of feel it. There's not the same weight to the objects sometimes, and
it's missing imperfections, it feels like, which is kind of what sells it.
So they, like, the actors were just on blue screens, I guess, from most of that stuff.
Like the whole barrel scene where they're in the water, almost that entire environment all the way through that entire scene is just like CG.
So they didn't even have the guys in actual water with the barrels?
They did, for just like so their hair would get like super wet and they'd be able to come up, but all the water is simulated water. They had a team of artists whose sole job was to learn water fluid simulation for a year. And they literally, that's all they did was just make the realistic water simulation.
And then this is what we call how to make a person go insane.
Yeah.
You got one job all year.
You're like, the foam is slightly
You're
off.
going to look at water. Dude, I don't know if you saw this video, but the 1917 stuff when he's in the river, did you see the behind the scenes where that was a real, not a real river, but like it was real water, but they had built that river.
Yeah, because the
It's
art
like a big
department
set.
built all of it.
Yeah, so it's like, in the movie it looks amazing, but it's just like there's this long, like, it's kind of like, it reminded me of like you go to a water park with like a lazy river type vibe. The sides have, you know, you can in the behind the scenes you can see the edges where there's like whatever buffers, and it's just all this rushing water. I was like, because I was wondering, I was like, they threw this actor in a river? That seems insane.
Yeah, I know it said the art department built every single one of their sets for that movie.
Anyways, carry on.
But I mean, that was basically it between Lord of the Rings and The Hobbit.
Yeah.
I really like Lord of the Rings. I think it holds up. It has some imperfections, but the special effects really went a long way because it's real characters, real sets, real lighting, and that's kind of what makes it almost timeless. Versus like The Hobbit, where like CG's already advanced from even when those movies were made, and it would look even better now, and it just doesn't hold up the same. I think it can date a lot faster.
Yeah, like it's like the prequels, Star Wars prequels, just
they're just outdated like that.
Yeah, because they literally had hardly anything in those environments that was real.
Yeah. And it's a sad thing with those, especially, that I feel like if those movies didn't happen, I would imagine we'd be even further behind with like CGI and digital effects. It's the unfortunate thing that like something that so many people love, being Star Wars, had to, be, I guess, the sacrificial lamb, so to speak, to have terrible CGI.
That's it for me, though, on like Lord of the Rings.
Why don't we take a quick break, and then we'll jump into Brad's section. Hey guys, we just wanted to take a quick second to tell you we have launched our Patreon page. It's a place where listeners can help support the show and gain access to exclusive content.
Now for $5 a month, our Patreon members get bonus episodes like our classic movie nights, where we watch classic films and talk in depth about what we liked, what hasn't aged as well, and how they achieved some of their special effects.
You'll also get early access to episodes before they're released to the public, and we'll give you a shout out on an episode of the show as well. Now, this is a growing platform, so we'll be adding all kinds of new content over time, and you can gain access to all of it exclusively at patreon.com/friends from film school.
You can follow at Sozo Bear Films on Instagram, Facebook, and Twitter, and don't forget to subscribe to our YouTube channel. Now, let's get back to the show.
And we're back. So, hope you enjoyed the break. I want to talk about, because I approached this a little bit different. I thought, is practical effects better than CGI? And the first thing that came to mind, which I had like seen a few videos or read something online about it before, but I hadn't done a ton of research, but it was the 2011 The Thing. So 1982, John Carpenter makes a remake of a 1950s movie, but it's John Carpenter's The Thing. It's kind of a beloved, sci-fi horror classic, starring Kurt Russell. It's a really good movie, but it's very well known for its awesome practical effects.
Yeah.
There's the
Crazy
scenes where they're doing the thing with the guy's chest, and it opens up and like eats the guy's hand.
Clear.
The monster crawling on the ceiling with a human face.
Yeah.
Just a lot of terrifying, just real
creepy animatronics.
Mm-hmm. So the craziest thing to me, though, is the 2011 version. When it was being made, they're like, okay, we're going all in. We're staying true to John Carpenter's vision. We're almost paying homage. And it's a weird thing because it's a reboot, but also it's a prequel in a way. And I personally haven't seen the movie, but from all the clips I've seen, what they ended up doing is they went with terrible CGI. And the reason because of that...
They're like, we're going to go with terrible CGI.
Well, the writer and the director, they said, we're going to do this because we want to, kind of have practical effects. We want to be in the same vein that John Carpenter made his film. And they did that. They hired this company, Amalgamated Dynamics, also known as Studio ADI. And the two guys that formed it, they're proteges of Stan Winston. So, very well known for his effects.
And just Stan Winston did like every movie you've ever seen, like E.T., right? Like I think like all the like dinosaurs and stuff. Lots of amazing animatronics.
All the dinosaurs in E.T.
All the dinosaurs in E.T.
And these guys, I mean, they're pretty well known for their stuff. They designed even Pennywise in the new It movie, the Green Goblin. It's from the Tobey Maguire Spider-Man.
Awesome.
Yeah, so they've done, and that's just kind of a little bit. They even went further and did the aliens for Aliens versus Predator, I think, as well as the Predator. So they're very good at what they do. These guys, their team created hundreds of animatronic monsters, really impressive like suits, and watching footage of people in the suits. They're doing all these tests like eyes with animatronics, puppetry, all these tentacles. It's
So
like
cool.
people's faces. There's a part in the movie where a guy's face opens up. It's the monster, because the whole thing with the thing is you don't know who is the monster.
Right.
It can
They look
disguise
like-
itself as a human until suddenly it becomes
There's an imposter among us.
exactly. So they had stuff where these people, there's a scene in the movie where the monster, it's looking like a person, it's running back, and then it lands its face on one of the guys, and it morphs into its face.
Whoa.
And it combines. Well, they have this rubber like animatronic that is that.
And they filmed all this in the new one.
They filmed all of it. They did the movie, and this is the saddest part about it. These people, poured their hearts and souls. Every video I watched of their test, like everything, it looked so cool. Universal sees it. They do some test screenings, and they demand that the film undergoes some reshoots, including a new ending, and they cover all of this practical effects with CGI.
That hurt my soul.
Wow.
That it must be. God,
That's crazy, man.
whenever someone you work super hard and pour yourself into something, and then someone else just completely just ignores it and then does something else, like
Yeah.
adding a pen to a floating scene.
Personal grievances.
I'm just kidding.
So the funniest thing is the writer and the director, in interviews before and while filming the movie, they're talking about how much they want to go into the practical effects. Afterwards, it's kind of this PR spin where the director goes, yeah, it ended up looking too much like an 80s movie, which was the goal from the onset, but apparently
I
that's
also-
what people didn't.
I feel like that would be a selling point too,
I think
It's
people
like-
would have really appreciated.
Yeah.
I think everything I read about this, it seemed like studio meddling, right?
Yeah.
And I think the big thing with CGI is in visual effects. And I think I read this, bad VFX. This is from a video that Freddie Wong, he's a well-known YouTuber, filmmaker. He put out a video called Why CGI Sucks, Except When It Doesn't. And one of the points he brought up in it is bad VFX is down to money and time. And that's a perfect example of this. In the 11th hour, Universal says, hey, we need to add all this CGI, go over all the work. Where the, studio ADI, they had months, maybe years, honestly, to, perfect these models and put all the work in. And then suddenly, they're being thrown to this visual effects company to cover everything up.
Man, it would be cool if they did a re-release with the animatronics.
I would really like that.
If enough people, because it sounds like it's out there, it's made.
There's probably a super secret copy.
Yeah. But that was like the biggest thing, was just the sad reality that these people are doing it. And obviously the CGI, every scene I saw, it just
was
doesn't, it doesn't look all that great, And it's 2011 was when it was released, so it's been 10 years now.
Those guys probably were like, because the technology for computers at that time was not that great. Like, it was okay, but it wasn't the best.
Yeah.
So their rendering times were probably like forever to make something look good. So they probably had to just lower the res and cut corners to make it.
And that's what
come out in
every
time.
clip I watched from the actual finished movie, it looked like there were corners being cut.
Yeah.
Where it felt like if there was a little bit more time, a little bit more detail, it could have. The CGI is not necessarily the issue. It's the fact that it was just kind of thrown together at the last minute.
It sucks.
And all this work that people did
That's
was
why
thrown away.
you really feel bad for
Yeah.
them.
Yeah.
I think that the CGI, like you were saying, his quote with the time and money, CGI is just like everything else. Like editing is the same way. It's like when you decide to walk away from it is when it's done. You know, if you're mixing a record, like mixing music, you could tweak that forever, you know. And it's basically it's done when you're like, okay, I've got to stop working on it, either because I don't have any more time, I don't have any more money, or you've just like reached your limits of what you can pull off. But it's like if you could spend forever on it, eventually you'd get it really good looking.
Oh yeah,
Yeah, totally.
yeah. This is interesting too. Tom Woodruff, he's one of the co-founders of Amalgamated Dynamics, but he said, because he had some interviews, I don't know if it was before or after they released the movie, but he said audiences are savvy and they can tell if something looks off. And that's why he's, you know, obviously owning a practical effects company, he's very much pro practical effects.
Right.
But I agree with him on that. He also said the benefit to practical effects is it helps the actors when acting on screen.
Oh, agreed.
And I would say, even going back to Lord of the Rings, that's the difference. You know, the people, of course there's a lot of CGI and stuff, but a lot of those orcs that the
They're
people
real.
are
They're
interacting,
people
yeah,
dressed
it's
up.
people,
Yeah.
and hundreds of people even, you know. So whereas I think everything for The Hobbit was mostly just people in either mocap suits.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's
And you can even tell that in like the Mandalorian, you know?
Right.
Using the giant screens, and a lot of those sets are real, you know, there's just a weight to it.
Yeah. You know, and you're saying people are savvy, and it's like they may not be experts at filmmaking or CGI,
But they can tell when something's off.
well, they are experts at real life because they see it every day. So
Yeah.
they know, they're literally experts at what a human face looks like because they spend their entire life studying someone
Yeah.
other
don't
people's
ever try to
faces.
recreate a human face.
Yeah. The other interesting thing about ADI is, well, I have two actually, but they were brought on by Ridley Scott back in the 90s. He was going to direct the adaptation of I Am Legend, which ended up being
really?
the Will Smith movie.
Whoa.
But they had some designs. I don't know how far they got into it. I saw like, it seemed like models more so of the vampires that they were making. But that project fell through, you know, but they were decided not to be brought on to the 2007 version because they wanted to do full CG vampires.
That's a movie I wish would have used practical stuff.
Exactly.
Because it ruined it for me.
I really like that movie.
Yeah, it's a okay movie. I loved the book. I read it before I saw the movie, years before. And then, yeah, the movie just, I felt like the vampires didn't seem that scary to me because they were so...
The dogs were scarier to me.
Yeah.
Like when the dogs get sicked on them or whatever.
Yeah.
Yeah. Another thing is they decided to make their own movie.
Oh, really?
So they did a crowdfunding. It's called Harbinger Down. It came out in 2015. So I guess
Harbinger Down?
Yeah. And it's interesting because it kind of, it's very tongue-in-cheek horror movie, but it's set in like an Alaskan place where all these scientists are. So it's very much in vein
like
of
The
The Thing. And I guess, I don't know, because the video I watched, you know, it's using a lot of practical effects, but their budget was $400,000, which compared to...
That is nothing compared to now.
Exactly. And or The Thing that they worked on in 2011. So the review I saw about it, it was saying the effects were decent and all right, but because of that budget, you know, again, with anything, just like CGI, time and money.
Yeah.
And the money wasn't enough. And I guess they couldn't use some of the models they had developed for The Thing. I don't know. That's just my assumption because I would imagine they would have all that stuff still.
Yeah.
You know, it's not like, oh, okay,
They wouldn't just throw it away.
we're not
They
doing
gotta have
this
a
movie.
warehouse.
Yeah, we're going to just destroy it, burn it in the fire.
I want to see the scene when the Thing's face melds into like someone
Oh,
else's
it's
face.
it's awesome.
And
God,
that,
I want to see that so
the
bad.
CGI part looks bad, and I mean even the alien design that they had, it's so impressive. I think I would love to see the copy of the movie with it because I think there's even parts in the 1982 version that watching it now you can still appreciate, but some of it, you know, you can tell,
right.
you know, it seems like an 80s movie, but
Yeah.
I feel like they would have perfected some of it, you know, even with more modern techniques in 2011.
Dang.
I don't know. Share with us your comparison, Luke.
Okay, cool. So mine, I was kind of focusing on miniatures and that kind of led me to thinking about Christopher Nolan. And he is a filmmaker who is no stranger to the use of miniatures. And I didn't know this, but he actually used a miniature Batmobile and garbage truck for The Dark Knight.
Really?
Yeah. And miniature planes for The Dark Knight Rises. And then they destroyed a miniature hospital fortress in Inception.
Oh.
Whoa.
Yeah, so he's all about kind of in-camera stuff, and he sort of bucks the system in that way, and not always going full CGI.
Like the airplane scene with
Bane.
Yeah, where they were like filming it, and it's like the actual plane is like breaking apart.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's super impressive.
But his use of miniatures in Interstellar is where I think it really pays off, because these models, like you were saying, the bigatures, these are huge models, maybe like 15 feet across for, I forget the name of the ships, but like the round one, that's the spinning one. That allows for a ton of detail to be added to the spaceships.
Endurance rotation is 67, 68 RPM.
Okay, get ready to match our spin with the retro thrusters.
It's not possible.
No, it's necessary.
And then they did motion control filming, but instead of doing like what they would normally do, which is like really pretty shots for a movie, they would do like 3 passes to get the like right exposure. They would do like a pass for what you're seeing inside the ship or something, and then a pass for like the exterior stuff. They would do multiple passes too. So like, say like I'm filming you right now and the window is like bright outside.
Oh.
So how that would be exposed is outside would be really blown out or something.
So it's just HDR, right?
Kind of, yeah. So they would do multiple passes, but what he asked them to do instead was to film it all like they would actually be photographed. So that gave it this like raw feeling to it, and it almost has kind of a documentary vibe sometimes.
Yeah.
And another thing they did was real explosions. Like Christopher Nolan wanted the cameras mounted on the spaceships, so it had that sort of NASA footage look. And when it came time to blow up the Ranger, they shot it from a safe distance, but he didn't like it. So he wanted it to be attached to the ship like it was in the other scenes. So they took a camera. They call this the Pelicam. They put their VistaVision camera inside a Pelican case.
Awesome.
Yeah, it's like, and like
If you don't know a Pelican case, it's literally an indestructible case, pretty much. It's like water resistant, pressure resistant. They're strong.
Yeah, it's like you carry gear around in it or whatever.
So he's pretty much advertising for Pelican by putting these cameras in it and blowing them up.
Yeah, they put the camera inside the Pelican case and cut a hole in it for the lens, and they had a cable holding onto it, and it like rode the ship for like a few frames as it blew up, and then they could cut the wire, I think, and it held the camera, so it caught the case or whatever while the model was being demolished.
Cool.
Yeah. That was pretty cool.
That's really cool.
And then, if you compare Interstellar to Gravity, which is like completely CGI, I compared these two because the two like really famous recent space films, and they had very different techniques. Yeah, The Martian was good too, but like it's not in space as much. It's mostly on Mars. So complete CGI for Gravity, which is really it looks beautiful, honestly. Mm-hmm. I think the only real footage they kept was the actors' faces. Like even like their suits and stuff were 3D modeled. Even Sandra Bullock's body in those scenes where she takes off
because it's like only her face in the helmet, right?
Yeah.
When they're outside.
Yeah. Which is crazy. I saw some behind the scenes of that too when doing my research, and she's in kind of like a space suit for some of the footage. So she has the hand like in that giant glove of what an astronaut suit would be. And then they CGI even that.
Yeah, everything around her. Like they actually had kind of a set that looks sort of like a space station in some of those parts where she's like on these wires like flying through. But they. Do
you think it was only reference?
Yeah, I guess because like they took her body and because of the way like zero gravity or whatever affects your body, it's really hard to do that with wires because you're still gonna like hang your leg differently or whatever. So it's funny because you see the before and after, and they basically put her legs in a completely different position, kind of stuff like that, like to where her body looks more weightless, and they basically kept like her head pretty much. But the one of the cool things they did was, they had to previs pretty much the whole thing to figure out what they were going, and that's like basically a kind of like an animation as a blueprint for the whole movie. But it really helped them because they used those previs CGI scenes while they were filming. And so what they did was they invented a light box. It's a 9 by 9 by 9 foot cube outfitted with 4,096 LED bulbs. Yeah, it's a ton of LEDs, and this light box could mimic the light effects from any given scene to allow shadows to play across like Sandra Bullock's face or whatever.
Cool. That's pretty neat.
And so it's literally just a box all the way around her. And those scenes, if you watch the behind the scenes, it's cool because like when in the opening, when the spaceship's like exploding around her, that's happening on these LEDs all around her. So she's kind of seeing
explosions in the LEDs, like it's simulating.
It's literally, imagine a million LEDs put together just to make a screen, and now whatever you put on there just looks kind of like
it's a lot like the
volume and
for Mandalorian,
kind of like the Mandalorian, but it's not realistic looking. It's like you can see all the LEDs.
Okay, so
it's almost like this pixelated version, but so she kind of has a reference of like what's happening around her because of that, and then this like robotic arm thing is holding her body in play, holding her body up, and it's crazy because it's like a ring around the actor, and it's connected to them, so it spins them because they couldn't spin. Like the camera moves and it spins them, but like if she needs to go like upside down, the camera does it. They use those big motion control cameras on the robot.
That's gotta be so disorienting.
Yeah, and it goes like, and it flips upside down and goes, because if she was actually flipped upside down, for one, her hair would go crazy, I guess, and also you can see them straining. You can see the blood, and if there's no gravity, the blood doesn't run to your head and all that. But basically though, dang, I forgot what I was about to say about that. I'm sorry, there was something else about that I can't quite remember, but it's pretty impressive to see how they did it. Oh, that's what it was, dude. Okay, so they had a pretty big like mechanical failure before shooting.
Oh no.
Yeah, setting up. I don't know if Sandra Bullock knew this before they filmed, because I don't know if she would have gone in there, but the robot arm, I mean, this stuff weighs like tons, so it accidentally went like straight through the screen, like busted through it, which literally would have decapitated her if she had been in there. So like,
oh man,
yeah, dude. So that happens before shooting, and they I guess they get all the kinks out, get the bugs fixed. But
she's like, "What are all these scrapes on this arm?" They're like, "Don't worry about it.
Is this safe?" Totally safe. We already killed your stand-in. So, anyways, that movie was full CGI. I think it was done really well. I don't know that you could make that movie practically, like the way they did Gravity. It'd be tough to pull off a lot of that stuff. I think they could have done more for the interiors of the space capsules, and you know what I mean, instead of replacing set. Now, I guess they did keep some of it, like when they did have real sets, like when George Clooney shows up in that capsule. She's sort of having that vision. That was cool because they had that interior of that capsule set to break away, so they could pull part of it out, and the camera guy gets in close to her, and that's pretty cool.
I guess it depends on what your movie is at that point. It's like, if you're going to be in space the whole time, it makes more sense to do CGI. Or like if you're telling some like King Kong versus Godzilla, where are you going to find like a real Godzilla or whatever, besides like making a fake like model one that's like, the animation doesn't look right. So it makes sense sometimes to use visual effects to create those characters and scenes, but if you can do it practically, you probably should.
Yeah.
Who was the DP for Gravity? Was that Chivo?
I think so. I believe I remember seeing that. Ryan will look that up.
He typically does most of Cuaron stuff. So,
but I was thinking about what are the places where CGI is the best.
Well, that's where I want to bring up like David Fincher.
Okay.
He's the hidden VFX king. Like you would most of his movies, you don't really think about being VFX heavy, right? They're people dramas, thrillers, you know, like not King Kong, Godzilla. Speaking of Godzilla, The Social Network has 1,000 VFX shots in it, compared to the 2014 Godzilla film only having 960.
Whoa.
Like, it's just crazy how much he uses.
Yeah, and a movie that you don't think has any VFX.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But like we've mentioned on a podcast a while ago, if you're unfamiliar with The Social Network, like the Winklevoss twins are both Armie Hammer, you know, face. They had the other actor played the twin for the scenes, and then they would just go back, refilm it, place his face. So they're throughout that movie. There's stuff, I don't know if y'all remember, like the rowing scene where, it's them rowing. Not only do you have them, but all of the effects to make it look like tilt shift photography, like the backgrounds are replaced, then changing the focus digitally, but also keeping like people in focus, Yeah. It's just stuff like that.
You
like
don't think
he's
about.
adding it all the time. In Gone Girl, he has Tyler Perry's character tossing gummy bears at Ben Affleck, right?
Yeah.
All those gummy bears are CGI.
Really?
None of them are real.
So they're just going like that.
Yeah.
Just doing the motion.
So, and the reason it works perfect for David Fincher is he's notorious for doing hundreds of takes. A scene could be like 60 takes. He's like Stanley Kubrick in that way. And that's why he loves shooting on digital film as well, because you're not wasting film strips all the time. So why have a PA, scoop up all these gummy bears and keep replacing it where you can just act it out?
Yeah.
You
It's
get
such
perfect aim,
it's
too.
Perfect aim.
Exactly.
In Gone Girl too, when Amy and I forget Ben Affleck's character's name, but they're going golfing in one of the flashbacks of their dates. She hits a perfect hole-in-one in mini golf. Well, that ball is CGI.
Okay.
What's the point
makes
of
sense.
what's the point of keep on trying, for her to get that perfect shot?
Yeah, I
Because
like
at that point,
approach.
you can focus on the performance of the actors
Yeah.
and make sure that you nail that, because that's just another factor you don't have to worry about.
Sure.
Yeah. Did you find the answer to that?
Yeah.
Emmanuel Lubezki.
So it is Chivo.
Okay. Also, can you look up something real quick? I saw this movie where there's at the end of it, there's these ghost dinosaurs that come out of the ice, and I can't remember the name of it.
Jurassic Park 4.
No, but it reminded when you said that Harbinger Down,
Down, yeah.
Harbinger Down. It reminded me of that. It's literally kind of like The Thing. They're out in this Alaskan place, and they're drilling, and it's a great movie until the very end. It's dinosaur ghost. See if you can find what it is. I'll keep going.
Okay, another thing that, one, I didn't know this really, but David Fincher has at least practical or VFX background. He worked on Return of the Jedi with ILM.
Really?
Yeah.
Whoa. I
So
did not know that.
he got his start there and then did music videos and stuff before becoming a director. But the other thing is he uses all CGI blood. So, in stuff like Zodiac, all the blood CGI. Same
Okay.
thing with Girl with the Dragon Tattoo. And that kind of going back to when I was talking about the Thing remake from 2011. The Girl with the Dragon Tattoo came out at the same time. And I would say the VFX in that hold up so much better because it's not monsters and aliens. It's changing. Rooney Mara and Daniel Craig are walking down this road, and it might be like spring. It's supposed to be really snowy behind them. Well, they don't have snow to film with, but they just replace the
add it.
background. Yeah.
Would you say that that would be the kind of films that you would prefer? Is like these more realistic films that hide CGI?
You mean as far as in terms of the use of CGI?
Yeah, I guess so. Is that like the kind of, it's almost like editing where it's like you're a good editor if you can hide, like no one knows where you like make a cut or like it's seamless. It's like the same for CGI. If you don't notice it, then it's like really good.
But then again, I'm not opposed to like Lord of the Rings or Star Wars or something.
Yeah. Like
or
the Avengers.
yeah, like Thanos is an amazing
God, so
example of CGI.
Pretty, isn't it? Perfectly balanced, as all things should be.
I mean, there's so much CGI. Even in Iron Man, like in the first one, they filmed the suit, like the silver, I guess, Mark II, whatever, Iron Man suit.
Yeah.
And they filmed it to get reference, but then in the movie, it's a CGI model. But you can't tell the difference,
No.
Most of the time, Robert Downey Jr. isn't in that suit at all.
Yeah.
Like, they're just doing like what they did with Sandra Bullock in Gravity. They're throwing his face in there.
Yeah.
And it works. Like, you buy into it.
And also, like, sometimes you really appreciate the CGI when you rewatch something old that like doesn't hold up, because over Christmas I was watching The Addams Family, and man, the special effects were just terrible, because like is the hand called the Thing? Thing, is that the name of the hand? I think it is. Thing is like the hand that runs around.
Yeah.
Thing comes up a lot.
Yeah, but that hand looks, you could even see a little bit of the blue, like from the blue screen they did, and it just, the top of it was I guess just painted or whatever, so to look like it had been cut, so, and there was like no shadow on the ground really for it. It didn't hold up.
I would say even too with Fincher's latest movie, Mank, that came out last year, like he recreated 1930s and 1940s Hollywood, and it's all shot like an old black and white movie. And I watched the VFX company that did that was Art Temple, and it's just adding details to William Randolph Hearst's house, and they have the set, but it's like that character or the real man had this kind of castle, off somewhere, and adding all these flourishes that obviously they just didn't want to take the time to do an art department to build.
Or when we're filming, sometimes we have to do stuff like that. It's just, say you're filming inside an office place and you need to replace the name of the company on the wall or whatever, or actually put a sign there that's not there. It's much easier sometimes to do that in post than to print a giant sign that's you're never going to use again. Maybe you only need it for one scene or something.
Yeah, and then too, going back to Girl with the Dragon Tattoo, there's a scene at the end of Rooney Mara's character. Oh, this was the crazy thing. It's just like the little details that you would think, why would you do this in CGI? But when you think about how often Fincher films a take, it makes sense. They added the part to her hair digitally, because they kept on filming these takes and it could change,
Really?
But to keep it consistent, they just they composited, and would move it around. It's just cool. Crazy. But they did like a whole, like the third act of her riding a motorcycle. Well, because she's rushed, it plays into the storyline of the movie. She's typically riding with a helmet, right? So they'll probably use a stunt double. But for this one, she's rushed, she's having to jump on her bike, so she doesn't have a helmet. Well, they film it with the stunt driver wearing a helmet, but they have the tracking points, and then they recreate it adding her head, and then the car crashes in that aren't real car crashes, it's CGI. It's just but it's stuff you would never think about. It's just so crazy.
Wow. Ryan, were you able to find out what that's called?
Scooby-Doo and the Legend of Phantosaur.
Okay, that's not it. Perfect.
Yeah, no, I couldn't find it.
That's what came up when I Googled it, too. Man,
what about the CGI in Scooby-Doo? Does that hold up?
No. That's so bad.
But that movie, though, it was like a great example, because it's so scary, and then at the end, the CGI ruins. It's literally these big spirits of like a T-Rex or something.
Oh man,
we're not talking about Scooby-Doo anymore.
No.
Okay. I wonder what that movie is.
I don't know. I watched it years ago, and it was really good though. Like the whole time leading up, because it's like this creepy stuff's happening where this guy, he keeps going out into the cold at night, like randomly, and he like I can't remember the plot exactly, but he's like in his underwear out in the Arctic cold, like trying to film something out there, and you see this thing like go by behind him, really creepy and everything. And then the ending's just so stupid.
That's the problem with some horror stuff. Is like once you see the full, like what the scary part is, you're just like, oh my god. Like at the end of Alien. Alien's super scary until like it gets jettisoned from the ship and you just see the body of the alien be like,
Yeah.
it's so stupid.
I was thinking when you said that Cloverfield. Yeah.
Oh,
it's
yeah.
like the moment you see the monster kind of in full.
I think I found it. I think it's called The Last Winter. And it's basically like because they're drilling down into the oil. It's like those. It's the connection is the fossil fuels and the dinosaurs.
I don't know if I like that concept.
Yeah. And I had no idea watching it though, so I was like really invested.
And then until the very end,
it's just you literally see CGI dinosaur ghost.
Yeah.
Which sounds cool, but
so I feel like I think we're all on the same page. Is practical effects and computer generated effects, they're both good and they both can be great. I think it's when you have them combined.
They're both just tools, right?
Yeah. And I think you said something about like a Mark Hamill. Saying,
yeah. So Mark Hamill had a quote after they were done with Star Wars, and he basically was saying that at the end of the day, special effects are awesome and they're essential to filmmaking, but they're just an effect. They're a tool, and if you don't surround that tool with characters that are meaningful, that you care about, a story that gets you invested, and a crew and team that puts their heart and soul into the project, then it's going to fall flat. So it's like you need everything at 100% for it to like work.
I love
matter.
it.
I
agree.
agree.
I think that's our ending point right there.
Yeah. Thanks, Mark Hamill.
Thanks, Mark. Well, listen, don't forget to go follow us on our new Instagram. It's Friends from Film School Podcast. Check that out. We're just posting all kinds of cool stuff that we find interesting. And if you like movies like we do, you might just dig it. So check that out. Check out the Patreon. You can sign up, get some cool bonus episodes each month. Help us keep, making this show. Anything else to plug?
Night at the Movies, if you're a filmmaker.
We
have open submissions for a Night at the Movies 2021. That'll be in August,
and that's a film festival that we put on.
Yeah.
So if you'd like to show your film in our film festival, definitely please submit. How do they find that?
They'll find that on filmfreeway.com. Search Sosa Bear Films Presents a Night at the Movies, and submissions, I think early bird ends sometime this month.
It was like the end of this month, right?
Sure.
I can't remember.
Cool.
We'll put the info down below. So
Yeah.
All right, man. See everybody next time.
see you.
Well, okay, goodbye.